Hey class, Mr. Hanji here. For today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at section 9.1, which is going to deal with measures of center and spread. This is going to be our introduction to module 9, where we're going to take a look at different types of statistics and how to go through and look at data. Now, for today's lesson, we have two learning goals. Our first learning goal is that you will be able to find the mean and median of a given data set. So we're going to talk about what mean and median are and how to find them. And then also we'll talk about how to find the standard deviation, the first and third quartiles, and IQR of a data set. So we're going to take a look at what the first and third quartile mean, then how we can use that to find the IQR, and then lastly we'll finish up with standard deviation. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is mean and median. And let's first talk about what they are before we jump into finding those. So two commonly used measures of center for a set of numerical data are mean and median. Measures of center represent a central or typical value of a data set. The mean is the sum of the values in the data set divided by the number of values in the set. So when we talk about finding the mean, what you're going to do is go through and add all the numbers up in your data set, and then you're going to divide by how many there are. Okay, the mean is considered the average, and to find the average, you have to add all the numbers up and then divide by how many numbers are in the data set. Now, the median is the middle value in a set when the values are arranged in numerical order. So you're going to take your data set and you're going to go through and put it in order from least to greatest, and the median is going to be the middle number. Now, sometimes your median is one number, sometimes your median is going to reside between two numbers. And we're going to talk about each situation and how you find those. So remember that mean, you're going to go through and add all the numbers up and divide by how many there are. Median, you're going to go through and arrange the numbers in order from least to greatest. And then the middle number is going to be your median. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and get into example 1, where it's going to ask us to find the mean and median for each data set. So when you get to the homework, you're going to see some problems like example 1, where they're going to give you a data set for a situation, and they want you to determine the mean and the median. So for example 1a, we have the number of text messages that Isaac received each day for a week is shown. So our data set is 47, 49, 54, 50, 48, 47, and 55. So they give us this data set. They want us to go through and find the mean and the median of each data set. So first of all, let's go through and talk about how to find the mean. The mean is going to come from adding all these numbers up and then dividing by how many numbers there are in the data set. So let's first get that started. So for the mean, if we go through and add all these numbers up, so if we do 47 plus 49 plus 54 plus 50 plus 48 plus 47 plus 55, we're going to end up with 350 as the total of all those added up. And then we're going to divide 350 by how many numbers there are. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 7 numbers in the data set. So we're going to take 350 and we're going to divide it by 7. So 350 divided by 7 is going to give us 50. So that means my mean for the data set is 50. And that is our first answer. Now that is finding the mean. The next thing is we need to go through and find the median. So to find the median is you have to take this data set and we need to put it in order from least to greatest. So we're going to go through and order our data. So we're going to take 47, 49, 54, 50, 48, and 47, and 55 and put it in order. So the lowest number that I see in this data set is 47. And we do see that 47 appears twice, so we're going to write it again. The next number after 47 is going to be 48. Then we have 49, 50, and then we have 54, and then we'll end up with 55 at the end. So 54, and then 55. All right, now to find the median is going to be the middle number. So we're going to start at both ends of our data set in order, and we're going to work our way towards the middle. So if we start at both ends, okay, so we start at 47, 55, and then we go to 47 and 54, and then we have 48 and 50, and I am down to one number. If you make your way down to one number, then that one number is going to be your median. So in this case, our median is 49, and then I'll talk here shortly about how you find your median if it ends up being between two numbers like that. But in this case, our median is 49, and that is our answer. And that is how we're going to go through and find the mean and median of a data set. So let's go ahead and take a look at example 1, part B, to practice this again. So for example 1, part B, we have the amount of money Elise earned on tips per day for 6 days is listed below. Now, I have already gone through and taken that data set and put it in order just to save us some time. So we have 75, 97, 360, 84, 119, and then 100. So they gave us the amount for 6 days, what Elise has earned in tips at her job. So now we need to go through and find the mean and the median. To find the mean, again, we're going to go through and add all these numbers up and then divide by how many. So we're going to go ahead and grab our handy dandy calculator. So we're going to take 75 plus 97 plus 360 plus 84 plus 119 plus 100. And we're going to end up with 835. And then we're going to divide by how many numbers there are overall, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to take 835 and we're going to divide by 6. And we're going to end up with a lovely decimal that we're going to round to one decimal place. And we have 139.16. Because this number is 5 or larger, we're going to round up to 139.2. And that is going to be our mean. Next, we need to go through and find the median. So to find the median, again, we're going to go through and put our data set in order from least to greatest, which I already have done. And then we're going to work our way into the middle number. So if we start at 75 and 360, and then 84 and 119, and then we have 97 and 100, so if I go to those, we're going to meet in between those two numbers. So we're going to back up for a moment. So our median is going to reside between 97 and 100. So to figure out what our median is, if it's between two numbers, like 97 and 100 in this case, you're going to add these two numbers together, and then we're going to divide by 2. So we're going to take 97 plus 100, and then divide by 2. So for a median, we do 97 plus 100, and then we'll divide by 2, because we want to find the middle of those two numbers. So 97 plus 100 is 197 divided by 2 is going to give us 98.5. So that means the median of this data set is 98.5. If it happens to result that our middle number is apparent in the problem, if you have an odd number of numbers, then you can find the number in the data set. If you have an even number of numbers, you're going to have to go through and find the middle between two numbers. So you're going to take those two, add them together, and then divide by 2. So for this answer, our mean is 139.2, and our median is going to be 98.5. And that is how we're going to do example 1. Now, example C is going to be much of the same thing. I just want to run through real quick, just to give us one more problem of practice. So we have Raul recorded the following golf scores in his last 7 games. Again, I've taken the 84, 94, 93, 89, 94, 81, and 90, and I've already gone through and put it in order from least to greatest over here. So we need to go through and find the mean and then the median of this data set. So to figure out our mean, again, we're going to go through and add all the numbers together and then divide by how many overall. So if we go through and do that, we're going to do 84 plus 94 plus 93 plus 89 plus 94 plus 81 plus 90. And when we add all of those together, we end up with 625. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers overall. So we're going to take 625 and divide it by 7. And we end up with, again, another fun decimal, so 89.28. And because we're going to round to one decimal, because this 8 is 5 or greater, we're going to round up to 89.3. So 89.3 is going to be the mean for this data set. Now to find the median, again, we're going to take our data set and we're going to put it in order from least to greatest, which I've already done. And we're going to go through and find the middle number. So to find the median, again, we're going to work from the ends. So 89 or 81 and 94. Then we have 84 and 94. We have 89 and 93. And I have one number remaining, which means that my median is going to be 90. So because it's not between 2 points like it was with part B, but just the fact that we resulted in one number, that means that that is our median. So 90 is going to be the median of this data set. And that is how you go through and do example 1, parts A through C, and how you find the mean and the median. Alright, so that accomplishes our first learning goal on finding the mean and the median. Our next part is we're going to talk about the first and third quartiles, and then we're going to talk about the IQR. So let's go ahead and move this on up and talk about what all of that means. All right. This whole paragraph is going to go through and talk about what IQ are and different measures of spread in terms of quartiles and whatnot. I'm going to go through and break it down into a more simpler explanation. When you are asked to find your first quartile, it is the median of the lower half of the set. The second quartile is the median of the whole set. So just think anytime they talk about second quartile, it's just the median. We're always going to refer to it as the median. So don't worry about second quartile. Just know that the first quartile is the middle number of the first half of the data set, and the third quartile is the middle number of the second half of the data set. Now the IQR is going to be taking the third and first quartiles, and you're going to find the difference. So that means you just take whatever number you have for the third quartile, and you're going to subtract it by the number that you get for the first quartile. So, for example, for this problem right here, when we're talking about finding the quartiles, the first thing you want to do is put the numbers in order from least to greatest. Your first goal is to find the median. So they found the median to be 5, as they have indicated here. To find the first quartile is you're going to ignore the second half of the data set, including the median, and you're going to find the middle number of the first half. Now that first quartile, that middle number, the first half, is 3. So our first quartile is 3. Now to find the third quartile, you're going to ignore the first half of the data and the median, and you're just going to focus on the second half of the data. And you're going to find the middle number of the second half of the data, which in this case is 7. So 7 is our third quartile. So our first quartile is 3, our third quartile is 7. If you were then asked to find the IQR, you just take the third quartile and you subtract it by the first quartile. So you would take 7 minus 3, and your IQR would in this case be 4. Now if they ever ask you to find the range of a data set, the range is going to be taking the largest number and subtracting it by the smallest number. So we would do 9 minus 1, and our range would be 8. So for example 2, they are going to ask us to go through and find the first quartile, the third quartile, and the IQR, and also the range for each data set. So let's go ahead and look at example 2 for our next part. So example 2 is going to ask us to find the range in the IQR for each data set. So for example 2a, they tell us that the April high temperatures for 5 years in Boston are 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, 84 degrees Fahrenheit, 93 degrees Fahrenheit, and then 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you get to these problems, you need to first and foremost go through and put the numbers in order from least to greatest. So if we do that for this problem, we're going to end up with, let's do this over here, 77 as our first number, and then we're going to have 84 next, then 86, 90, and then 93. So that is going through and putting them in order from least to greatest. And then the first thing that we want to do is go through and determine our range. So to figure out your range, what you're going to do is take your largest number and you're going to subtract it by your smallest number. So our largest number in this case is going to be 93, and our smallest number is 77. So we're going to do 93 minus 77, and if we use our calculator, 93 minus 77 is going to give us 16. So the range for this data set is 16. Now for the interquartile range, or our IQR, what we need to do first is discover our first quartile and then discover our third quartile. Now to be able to do that, the first thing we need to do is discover our median. So the median in this case, if we work from the outsides in, so we have 77, 93, 84, and 90. Our median in this case is 86. So I know 86 is my median. To find our first quartile, the first quartile is going to be the middle number of the first half of the data set. So we're going to ignore the second half of the data, including the median. So you're going to go from the median on, and we're going to exclude that. Now the middle number, so we have 77 and 84. The middle number is actually going to reside between these two numbers. So we have to figure out what is the middle point between 77 and 84. So our first quartile is going to reside there. So we're going to call that Q1. To figure out what that first quartile is, in that middle point between 77 and 84, we're going to add 77 and 84 and then divide by 2. So 77 plus 84 divided by 2 is going to give us 80.5. Just double check. So 77 plus 84 divided by 2. Yep. And we end up with 80.5. Now for the third quartile, we want to find the middle number between, or the middle number of the second half of the data. So we're going to exclude the first half of the data, including the median. So we have 90 and 93. Again, the middle number is going to reside between these two. So we need to go through and find that middle point between 90 and 93. So the third quartile resides right here. Sometimes you will result in a number from the data set. It will appear right there, so you don't have to worry about adding the two numbers and then dividing every time. So if we go through and do this, we have 90 plus 93. We get 183, and if we divide by 2, we end up with 91.5. So our third quartile is 91.5, because that would be the middle number for the second half of the data set, excluding the median. So now that I have my first and my third quartiles, to find my interquartile range, or my IQR, what we're going to do is take the third quartile, our 91.5, and we're going to subtract it by our first quartile, which is 80.5. So we're going to take 91.5 and we're going to subtract it by 80.5, and we end up with 11. So 11 is going to be our IQR for this data set. And that is how we're going to go through and find the range by taking the largest number and subtracting it by the smallest, and finding the IQR by taking the first and the third quartile and subtracting them. And that is how we're going to go through and do example 2. So that is part A. I do want to take a look at part B just to give us another example to reference. So if we take a look at part B, we have the number of runs scored by a softball team in 20 games are given below. And as you see, it is a lovely set of data. So we have 3, 4, 8, 12, 7, 5, 4, 12, 3, 9, 11, 4, 14, 8, 2, 10, 3, 10, 9, and 7. So we have 20 different scores listed there. Our goal would be to go through and put these in order from least to greatest. Now, I've already done that, so I'm going to go through and write them in order. So we have 2, and then 3 3s. We have 3 4s. We have 1 5, 2 7s, 2 8s, 2 9s, 2 10s, an 11, 2 12s, and then lastly a 14. So that is going through and putting the data set in order from least to greatest. First thing we need to do is go through and find our range. So to find the range, we're going to take our largest number and our smallest number and subtract them. Our largest number in this case is 14, and our smallest number is 2. So we're going to do 14 minus 2. If we do 14 minus 2, we get 12. Then we need to go through and figure out our IQR. And the first thing we need to do is figure out our median, then our first quartile, and then our third quartile. So to figure out the median, we're going to work from the ends towards the middle. So we start with 2 and 14, 3 and 12, 3 and 12, 3 and 11, 4 and 10, 4 and 10, 4 and 9, 5 and 9, 7 and 8, and then we end up with 7 and 8. So that means our median is going to reside between 7 and 8. And if we went through and calculated, our median would be 7.5 for this data set. Now that we have discovered our median, we now can go through and figure out our first quartile. So remember, our first quartile is ignoring the second half of the data set, including the median. So we're going to ignore the median in this case. And what we're going to do is find the middle number of the first half of the data set. So if we work our way in, we have 2 and 7, 3 and 7, 3 and 5, 3 and 4, and we end up at 4 and 4. So our first quartile is going to reside between those two 4s. Now, 4 plus 4 is 8 divided by 2. So our first quartile is going to be 4. Now, if we look at the second half of the data, excluding the median, we're going to find our third quartile. So if we work our way in, we have 8 and 14, 8 and 12, 9 and 12, 9 and 11, and then we're going to be between the two 10s. So between the two 10s is going to be our spot for our third quartile. And if we do 10 plus 10, we end up with 20. Divide by 2 is 10. So the middle number of the second half of the data set, excluding the median, would be 10. And that is going to be our third quartile, just like 4 is the middle number of the first half of our data set, and that makes 4 our first quartile. Now, to find our IQR, our interquartile range, we're going to take the third quartile, 10, and we're going to subtract it by our first quartile, which is 4. So if we do 10 minus 4, we're going to end up with 6. So that means our IQR in this situation is 6. And that is how we go through and find the range and IQR for part B. All right, so that example 1 and example 2 really is going to encompass a large majority of your homework and what you're going to be asked to do. There is one last thing that we need to talk about, and that is standard deviation. So let's go ahead and move on to that. Let's move this on up so we can focus on standard deviation, and then we will wrap up for today. So another measure of spread is the standard deviation. Now, standard deviation represents the average of the distance between individual data values and the mean. So it would be the average distance from the mean for each data value. Now, we're not going to worry about too much on interpretation of it. Really, we're just going to focus on how we can find standard deviation. And the formula for finding the standard deviation of the data set with n elements in the mean x is shown below. So this is how we're going to go through and find standard deviation. Now, you may be sitting there going, crap, what is that? Okay, the table in the example that I'm going to run through below will hopefully help you as we go through and do this. And I highly suggest that you reference either this video or my completed notes for reference as you go through and do the homework problem. So example 2 is going to ask us to find the standard deviation of 77, 86, 84, 93, and 90. So that is going to be our data set, and we need to find the standard deviation of that data set. And we're going to use this table to guide us through that. So they give us the data values, 77, 86, 84, 93, and 90. The first thing we need to figure out is the deviation from the mean. So the first thing that we need to do is to figure out the mean of the data set. So whenever you're asked to go through and find standard deviation, your first step is to find the mean of the data set. So that entails adding all the numbers up and dividing by how many there are. So we're going to do 77 plus 86 plus 84 plus 93 plus 90. So we end up with 430, and then we're going to divide by how many there are, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers. So 430 divided by 5 is going to give us 86. So that means our mean in this case is going to be 86. Now, when they talk about deviation from the mean, that means we're going to take the number for x, so these numbers right here, and subtract it by the mean. Anytime you see x with a little bar over it, that's the symbol for mean. So that means we're going to take these numbers and we're going to subtract them by the mean. So we're going to go through and do 77 minus 86, 86 minus 86, and so on. So I'm going to set all of these up. So we're going to go through and subtract the mean away from all these numbers to find the deviation from the mean. So 77 minus 86 is going to give us negative 9. We do 86 minus 86, we get 0. We do 84 minus 86, we get negative 2. If we do 93 minus 86, we get 7. And then 90 minus 86 is going to give us 4. All right, so now that I have my deviation from the mean, the next part is we're going to square the deviation. So that means we're going to take our results here, and we're going to square all of these numbers. So we're going to do negative 9 to the power of 2, 0 to the power of 2, negative 2 to the power of 2, 7 to the power of 2, and then 4 to the power of 2. So we're going to go through and square all of our results. Remember, if you do not recall from different notes that we've talked about in terms of taking something to the power, anytime that you have a negative number, you need to put it in parentheses. So if we did this negative 9 to the power of 2 without parentheses, we would get negative 81, and that's a false answer. So we have to do parentheses, negative 9, end parentheses, and then we can do to the power of 2. That's going to include the negative. If you don't do parentheses, it excludes the negative. And if we do that, we end up with 81. Whenever you go through and square all of these numbers, you should always end up with a positive number. So know that whatever you get, if you happen to get a negative, just take out the negative and just do the positive result. So 0 to the power of 2 is 0. Negative 2 to the power of 2 is 4. 7 to the power of 2 is 49. And then 4 to the power of 2 is 16. So I now have 81, 0, 4, 49, and 16. Your next step, so this would be then step number 3, is we're going to go through and add all those numbers up. So we're going to take 81 plus 0 plus 4 plus 89 plus 16. So we add them all up and we get 150. And then we're going to divide by how many there are. So we're finding the mean of our squared deviation. So we added them all up and divide by how many, which is 5. And if we do 150 divide by 5, we get 30. And then our final step, you could call this step 4, would be to take this 30 and we're going to take the square root of it. So we're going to take the square root of 30, and that is going to give us 5.47 and so on. We round to one decimal place because the 7 is larger than 5. That means we're going to round up to 5.5. And that is our final answer. So to recap what we did to find standard deviation. First, you want to find the mean of your data set. So you're going to add all these numbers up, divide by how many there are, and you get your mean. Then you're going to go through and take all of the data values, and you're going to subtract it by your mean, so 77 minus 86, and so on. So then you get a result of negative 9, 0, negative 2, 7, and 4. You're going to take these results after you have subtracted the mean from all these numbers, and you're going to square them. So you're going to put them to the power of 2, and then you get a result like 81, 0, 4, 49, 16. Your next step is to find the mean of this data set. So you're going to go through and add all these together, which gave us 150. Divide by how many there are, which is 5. We get 30. So you just found the mean of the square deviation. Then to find the standard deviation, you're going to take that mean of the square deviation and you're going to take the square root of it. Your final step should always be to take the square root, and that number is your standard deviation. So the standard deviation for this data set is going to be 5.5. All right, so that is it for example 3. I will leave part B for you to reference from my completed notes if you want to see another one done. And as always, I'll be more than happy to run through it if you have questions or would like me to do so. Otherwise, that is it for today on our notes for measures of center and spread for section 9.1, where we talked about mean and median. And we talked about range. We talked about interquartile range with the first and third quartiles, and finished with standard deviation. So that is it for our notes today. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. If you have any questions, as always, you can shoot me an email or just let me know the next time you see me. Otherwise, that is it for today. Thank you guys for listening, and have a great rest of your day. All right, bye.